big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show, the originally titled Nick Elston Show. Genuinely not a creative guy. Season 6, episode 6, and I'm delighted to welcome another amazing guest. Hot on the heels of the past couple of weeks, we have another amazing guest to bring you today in the shape of Faye Dicker. Big round of applause. Woo!
Good morning. Well, wonderful welcome. Thank you so much, Nick. Do you think you could do that every morning for me, please, as I just come downstairs and make the breakfast?
Yeah,
I'd
maybe
quite
just
like
clip
that.
this part and put it as your alarm call on the phone or something. The amazing Faye Dicker. Woo!
I am going to do that, actually. So on the days where the girls don't really appreciate me, I'm just going to play it as I walk downstairs. I think we could all do with one of those intros.
I love that. That is so cool. I think, and people may think that this is kind of like projected energy for the recording. Our first call went like this. We had no audience. We were just literally two
totally
put together.
Yeah. Like very overexcited, like, oh my goodness, how have I only just met you? Like this human being quite a lot, actually. Like him. Yeah.
Anyway, before we get down into all that kind of stuff, but thank you, by the way.
Yes.
So for everybody else, tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
So hello. My name's Faye. I'm a voiceover artist and hello again. And I also run Freelance Mum. Freelance Mum is child-friendly networking for mums in business born of my own need of being a freelance voiceover artist, juggling motherhood around business. And basically, I'd been a voiceover artist for, I don't know, 15 years or so, had the girls, thought, well, I know how to do freelancing. That bit's nailed. But then when I had the girls, I was like, oh, blinking Nora, how does this work? How do I pair the two things up? It just doesn't really work. And I just couldn't find a network in the true sense of the word for fellow mums like me, mums in business who are juggling. I had very, very little child-free time. On what little child-free time I had, I certainly wasn't going to waste it going to a networking event. But I also recognized that I needed that support. And I just thought, if it doesn't exist, I'm just going to have to create it. So I started child-friendly networking events for mums in business nearly 9 years ago, the measure of which is my youngest daughter, who is nearly 9. I often look at her and think, blinking Nora, my business is that old. And we've run successfully. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Completely. You know how some people measure things in like stacks of books?
Yeah.
I measure my business in the height of my child. And it's run successfully. Success.
This is going to be a nuts episode. I apologize to everybody in advance.
I'll get to the end of the sentence.
Yes.
It's run successfully in Bristol for 6 years. And then I pivoted during lockdown, and I have hubs all over the country. So in a nutshell, wow, that is me.
That's amazing. And it was interesting. I remember very kind of clearly, like when we first had a call, I know that name from somewhere. Now, usually that means that you've been convicted of something or or that you've died, which obviously you hadn't because you were in front of me. The name or that you've done something really kind of, but you were on BBC Radio, weren't you? That's kind of where I knew the name from.
And yes. So I used to present
just before we hit record. I was talking about this, but it's kind of car boot cell syndrome that was not part of your intro, but to me, that's absolutely fascinating. But to you, it's like, yeah, that happened. I did that. That's cool. And then you move on. We're going to get to tell us about how that looked, but that was a real thing for you, wasn't it, being a BBC radio presenter?
Yeah, it was massive. I used to present the early morning breakfast show at BBC Radio Bristol. So I'd get up at 10 to 4. I used to tell myself it was 4. So the alarm clock didn't have a 3 in it, but actually it was 3:50. And then I'd go to, the games you play with yourself. And then I'd go to BBC Radio Bristol, put the station on air. I'd have to opt. I'm doing it now because you'd have to opt. It's a touch screen from 5 Live and put the station on air. And then you'd wake up and say, good morning, you're listening to BBC Radio Bristol and Somerset Sound. And you just, wake up the West. And then I'd stay on and I'd do the travel until 9 o'clock in the morning. And it was like, it was almost like being in the fast lane of a motorway from 5 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock in the morning. Your senses have been on high alert for all of that time. And then you'd come off air and you'd be like, oh, blinking Nora and the rest of the world, just kind of like gently waking up. And I felt like I needed to, when you come off the motorway and you have to gently go back down through the gears.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like. I'd been going at like 100 miles an hour since the moment I'd woken up. And then I had to sort of gently go back down through the gears to get myself back into the day. So I did that. And I'd worked in commercial radio before that as well. There's a point in my life where I sort of likened my life a bit to being like Bridget Jones. I was in my 20s. I was a bit hapless in love, dating, kissing a lot of toads, and having lots of, part-time jobs at different radio stations. And one of these was, I used to occasionally do what they called a swing show, so a cover show at Star in Weston. So it'd typically be the Sunday show. I'd go in, I'd be the only person in the building. I was a little bit hungover, if I'm completely honest. I'd probably been out till far too late the night before, driven into Weston-super-Mare, trying to put the station on air. And invariably, I would always forget the security code to get into the building. And so I would be standing there outside Station House, at silly o'clock on Sunday morning. And when you get like 3 goes, and if you get it wrong for the 3rd time, that then alerts the local fire station. So I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Hi, no, don't worry, it's only me. And genuinely that was me. And then I'd have the station manager saying, hi, Faye, did you forget that? I've just had a phone call from the fire brigade. Are you okay? Absolutely fine. Just forgotten the security code again. And so, so it was very much, my life has been broadcasting on the airwaves in some way, shape or form for really the last sort of 20 years or so. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you know what? It kind of reminds me of one of my first talks was called A Showman's Life, because when you put yourself into that position of being visible and actually there, and actually your audience demands this kind of performance or an expectation of energy, or whether that be delivery or remembering security codes. People remember, kind of, they expect that kind of performance, but actually it's kind of like that kind of iceberg thing. What you see isn't always kind of what's going on behind, or the duck's legs flapping around in the water.
Oh,
screen on the surface.
Yeah, totally. It really is the best description and analogy of it ever. And I can remember when I was working at BBC Radio Bristol, for how computers do reboots.
Yeah.
And they just do, don't they? For some reason, my computer would always do a reboot at precisely the same time every morning. And it was when I was on air. Now, it's all well and good, a computer doing a reboot, but when the computer's doing the reboot at exactly the same time when you're on air, and that's got all the vital knowledge that you need, and you realise that you're the only person in the building, and the only thing that is coming out of the speakers of people's radio is what is coming out of your mouth, because nothing else is playing out of anything. And the best piece of advice someone gave to me in situations like that, when you are the sole thing keeping the station on air, is just talk very slowly in a very nice voice. And it doesn't really matter what you're saying at that point in time. You could just pick up the TV guide and just read that, and just read it in a very nice voice. And what it does is, one, it buys you a lot of time, and 2, it slows your brain down, because you are going, oh my goodness, I want to say all the swear words actually, and there are people who are listening, and my computer's decided to do its daily reboot now, and there is no music, there's nothing I can go to, it's just me. But just say those words in a really nice voice, nice and super slow, and everything will be okay.
I like that. That's really cool. Actually, BBC Radio Bristol was the first station I was on, and I was on, it was Dr. Phil's show on, I think it was a Saturday morning or something. I was terrified. God, bearing in mind I was going on to talk about anxiety, for Christ's sake. But I went on, and he literally kind of, like, again, in that very calming way, just said, like, you're okay, it's all good, this is what happens, this is what you're going to do, this, we're going to sit this far away from the microphone and just relax. And then I think the next time was on with Jeff Twentyman, and then it was a lot more kind of relaxed and casual then. But yeah, it's interesting that you can be very good at kind of standing in front of thousands of people, but put yourself in a different environment, and you still have those same kind of fears and anxieties, right?
Completely. And it's funny you should say that, Nick, because only this week I was on BBC Points West. By the way, that isn't me just gently dropping that in, but I was.
Do
it.
In the honestly, do it. It's worth the brand, to be fair. Just do it. Yeah.
So at the time of us recording, it's been International Women's Day this week. And as part of that, I was invited on to BBC Points West. Really lovely, nice surprise to go and speak about my work with Freelance Mum. And so it was the other way around. The roles had reversed. I was in the studio being interviewed. Now, my experiences in radio, I have done the odd bit of corporate television, but only the odd bit. But you'd think with all those years background, for me, sauntering into a studio should just be that. It should be sauntering into a studio. Faye, you're just talking about the thing that you know best, the thing you like to talk about the most. It's not going to be a problem. Well, my heart was going 10 to the dozen. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I'm sitting on the sofa, and fortunately, I am grinning from ear to ear. I'm absolutely beaming, and fortunately the words did come out in the right order, and I did make some sense. But which is what one always hopes. But I was really, really nervous, and I can't quite work out what it was. Was it because it was really important to me? Was it because I was the roles had been reversed? But I was uncharacteristically nervous. And I have to remind myself, and I say it to the girls, and I say it to myself, actually, nerves are just adrenaline. It's just your body's way. It's your body's engine revving you up, getting you ready to go. So a little bit of nerves are a good thing. They keep you sharp. But yeah, I was really nervous.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the most important things to remember, isn't it? I always get anxious, and I do this every day, but it's only for 2.5 minutes, because kind of build your playbook, don't you? You find your way through, and you're quite right. It's not about beating anxiety, because actually it's a really healthy and positive thing in that sense. It's about harnessing it and actually pointing it in the right direction, isn't it? Music I use a lot for that, kind of to change your state effectively. So always country music. It's not all about losing your doggy or misses, I promise, but it's always country music. But for me, it's kind of like that's to kind of to get you in a peak state, and then, as you said, to bring yourself back down gently afterwards as well.
Completely and utterly. And I think you make a really good point with music. Music can really charge you up and really like overfire you up sometimes. You're like, oh, I'm so pumped. I just need to take it down a peg. I just need to calm down a little now, and it's a really good thing. Funnily enough, I've been given, I'm absolutely rubbish at sitting down and doing nothing. One of the best things I got for Christmas was, and I asked for it, but it was, it's a piece of classical music for every day. It's a book, a bit like get a piece of poetry for every day. Now, I know nothing about classical music. I might know a little bit more now than I did on December the 31st. But I know really nothing. But I thought, I think I want to learn a little bit. I've got to this grand old age. I'd like to feel like I can learn a bit. So I read a bit about whatever the classical piece of music of the day is, and they write about the composer or a bit about their story, and they describe them as the daddy of the day or whatever. She writes incredibly well. And then I sort of try and look up the music either on YouTube or Alexa and listen to it. And I have to challenge myself to, during that time of listening, put my phone down. Don't look at my diary. Don't do anything else. Just listen to that piece of music. It's only 4 or 5 minutes. It's not long, and really listen to it. And actually, for me, it is a challenge, but it's also really calming. Now, like I say, I'm not a connoisseur of classical music. That is a challenge to me, but it's a really nice. I've realised it's quite a nice part of the process. For me, it almost bookmarks the end of the day. Pajamas on, finish the job, read this, listen to that. Yeah, the day is complete. It's good.
Love that. That's so cool. And you're quite right that my dressing game is the target at the end of the day. That's the bit of the rules. But okay, so I really want to take a deep dive into your journey now. So I want to take you way, way back. Consider this an open therapy session. I'm joking. Yes, okay. I promise. Tell us about baby Faye. Tell us about growing up and education and family life, and where did you grow up and how did that look? And bring us through to where you are today with Freelance Mum.
Oh, this is delightful. Thank you very much, Nick. I mean, you may regret asking that question, so just feel free to say when you want me to stop talking. So I'm quite happy for you to work at my age. I was born on December the 26th, 1975. So Boxing Day. And my parents.
Day baby too.
You are?
Yeah.
How bizarre.
Yeah.
Wow. I knew I liked you. Boxing Day baby twins of sorts. Yay. It's awesome.
Sorry, I've stopped you already. I'm gonna you carry on. It's your show.
It's good. It's good. No, it's not my show. It's your show. You interrupt as much as you like, especially at moments like that. So parents didn't have a great deal of money. The vicar they didn't have a car. The vicar took my mum to the hospital, and I love this bit of the story. My dad cycled with my nan on the back of the tandem to go and visit baby Faye in hospital, and we've still got the tandem that mum and dad had and still have. And it turns out they bought this tandem. God, this is a tangent I wasn't expecting to chuck in. They bought the tandem themselves actually when they first moved to Bristol for £5. And we had it done up during lockdown, and it's a war relic. It's a beautiful, it's an ancient piece, beautiful. So we still have that tandem in the family. So I grew up in Whitchurch, South Bristol, in a small terraced house, 2 wonderful parents who are still around, utterly gorgeous. My dad had and still has an allotment and used to take me and my sister to the allotments every Saturday. My mum used to have a Saturday job. I can remember when she got her Saturday job, I cried because I thought that our family weekends were over. And I can remember my mum saying, well, what would you like for lunch, Faye? You know, let me make you. And I said, spaghetti bolognese and strawberries and cream, please. They were my favourite things. And my mum gently explaining that she would make spaghetti bolognese, but strawberries weren't in season. I mean, you don't have conversations like that now, do you? You know, but those spaghetti bolognese, mummy, please don't go to work. And so, you know, I know, isn't it sweet? And so we had a fairly sort of, I suppose, typical childhood of the 80s. Dad would go out to work, mum did bits and pieces, you know, part-time bit from home, and a Saturday job, and then dad would look after us on a Saturday, and we just thought it was amazing, you know, doing it in dad's way. And I wouldn't say I particularly fitted in at school, if I'm completely honest. And I didn't really find my thing until I was at secondary school.
Okay.
That thing was drama. And I absolutely loved it. And actually, I was always I was only just telling this story to my husband because it's quite hard. I look at my eldest daughter, Jemima, she's 10, nearly 11. And actually, both my daughters go to the same junior school that I went to, which is strange. That wasn't the intention. I hasten to add, I have moved away from South Bristol. I've gone all over the place, but ended up moving back. Oh, brain's going in so many directions because now I want to tell you about this room I'm in. But if you're lucky,
all these rabbit holes are opening up now, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like, where do I tell? Which bit should I rein in first? So, yeah, I didn't, and I can see that especially my 11-year-old is grappling a bit with finding her place in this world. And so I look at that and I think, gosh, yes, I can remember that. But it was only when I went to secondary school and I auditioned for what was then called HTV Drama Workshop. And it was free drama lessons for children that were twice a week. Now, my parents didn't have masses of money, and all the drama classes in Bristol were paid for, you know, and there were also lots of musical classes, and that really wasn't quite my bag. And they couldn't afford for me to do drama. But everyone said, no one gets into HTV on their first audition. No one gets into HTV on their first audition. I thought, I know I am. And I auditioned. And I got in and I got my place at HTV Drama Workshop. And what that gave me was, it gave me people who I could hang out with and who were my tribe and that people who got me. But it also gave me my first experience of working in a professional environment and of walking into HTV and, you know, sort of thing, I've got to be on my best behavior here. These are television studios. I've got to be quiet, you know, and I knew how to conduct myself. And that was a really important lesson to learn. I later went on and I did quite a lot of television actually from quite a young age, be it that it was like extra work or the odd bit of speaking part. Got my equity card at the age of 16, got a part in Casualty. I was given a character name, and the character name being Melanie Nelms. And I found out that if you were given a character name, you could qualify for equity. So I thought, oh, I'll have a bit of that, please, which meant that I was professional. And nice. So from quite a young age I was professional, and it was a great thing to have. It works slightly differently now. It doesn't mean it means a little bit less, but then it was like, you have made it, you have arrived. And then I went off to college and I studied theatre at Dartington College of Arts, and this was kind of like the weirdos amongst the weirdos. You know, it really was. And I recently went, it was, you know, I recently went to a reunion, and it wasn't just like a mini reunion. If you want to go and make a cup of tea and come back, I'll probably still be going, Nick, by the way.
I'll let you behind the scenes here. I kind of make notes, but I'm running out of paper. But this is all good. This is fantastic. You carry on, honestly. I'm not stopping you.
I went to this reunion recently, and it was a reunion in the truest sense of the word, in that it was a fully immersive arts programme. You stayed in the old halls of residence, you went to the canteen, and it actually was a bit strange to quite literally be walking down memory lane in every single sense of the word, but 20 years on. And I couldn't help feel a little bit sorry for my 18-year-old self, who had kind of like left home for the first time, gone to Dartington, and was suddenly like, whoa, okay. Whereas when I found my drama friends as a younger age, I stood out a bit, but they were my friends. Now I'm like the weirdo amongst the weirdos. But it was also cool, but it was finding your way again in a different kind of way. And actually, of course, you know, you make wonderful friends. And I left and I got a job working in television. And I worked for a company called 24 Productions. And 24 Productions, I worked as a runner. And it was really good. I really enjoyed working as a runner for this television company. But I was also missing, I suppose you could say, my share of the limelight, the performance aspect. I loved the fact that I could be in production. I knew all the behind the scenes bit, but actually I was missing the performance. And I applied for a few jobs, funnily enough, at BBC Radio Bristol. And I didn't get them. So I stuck my neck on the line and I decided to phone up the news desk. I don't think I even knew who I was talking to. And I said, oh, look, I just wondered if you could give me some feedback, please. I've applied for a few jobs at BBC Radio Bristol. I haven't even had an interview, and I never mind if I get an interview, but I don't get the job. But I'd quite like to know why it is that you're not interviewing. What is it that you are not seeing? What am I putting down that you're not seeing? You know, I know Bristol. I've got a background in acting. Like, why am I not quite making the cut? Anyway, this woman said, oh, and she was really lovely. She said, yes, I can see your point. I mean, I don't know how I got through to the news desk and somebody, found my CV and, was kind enough to take this in. I can see your point. Tell you what, next time you're in Bristol, why don't we meet up and have a coffee? Oh, I'm going to be in Bristol next week, actually. She say these things. Yeah, just passing. So we met up and she said, what is it you really want to do, Faye? And when you think, I'm going to say it. I said, actually, what I'd really like to do is I'd really like to present. And she said, I tell you what, I'll take you into the studio and we'll just give you a sound check. And she said, because what we often find is that some people have got a lovely voice, but put them in a studio and they freak out. And they just don't know what to do because, studios got lots of dials and knobs. And, we're talking 20 years ago. Now these things probably wouldn't faze people in the same way. And she said, and we'll see how it goes. And I remember thinking, okay, Faye, now's your opportunity, but also you've got to practice your game face. And I wasn't actually very good at tech. And I thought, she's just told me that a lot of people go into a studio and freak out. You've got to go in and look like you are so a Faye with faders and buttons. Like when you're in your spare time, what you don't know about faders and buttons isn't worth knowing about. So I went in, had my poker face. Oh gosh, yes, totally at home here. Did a little voice demo, and she said, "You've got a really nice voice. You've got a really nice voice. Let's stay in touch." Meanwhile, I managed to get a job working for a local commercial station. It was an off-air role, as a program coordinator for Galaxy back in the day. Don't you remember Galaxy? Yeah, dance and R&B. Yeah, I wasn't massively into dance and R&B, but again, I was like, this is a great station. I can really learn my ropes here. And simultaneously got a job working for a company at the time called Traffic Link. Now, Traffic Link provided the traffic and travel to different radio stations across the country, of which I was one of the voices, and they wanted someone to provide the travel for the Devon patch. Well, of course, I knew Devon, and they wanted people who knew the local pronunciations of Devon. So I was like, oh, I can do that. So I had two jobs. One working at Galaxy off-air and one working at Traffic Link on-air. And of course, BBC Radio Bristol heard me and thought, oh, well, we quite like her, actually. We'd quite like to create a role. And so I look back and I think, gosh, I was lucky. Or my husband tells me off. He doesn't like the word lucky. Blessed, fortuitous. Insert whichever word you want instead of luck. Or use luck if you like luck. Anyway, they got in contact and said, we're going to create a role for you. And they created a role for me then doing the drive time travel. And they decided to opt out of Traffic Link providing the travel and opt in to me doing it in-house. So I probably definitely upset a few feathers leaving Traffic Link to go and they then ditched their service for me doing it live in-house. But it was from then that I then worked up to doing early breakfast at Radio Bristol. I did early breakfast at Radio Bristol twice. I did that for a short time and then I left and I worked in different commercial radio stations. And then I came back to Radio Bristol 10 years on to do the very same job that I had already done once before. And I kind of thought, oh my goodness, I thought my career would move on a bit. I thought that, like after having left early breakfast and worked at all these radio stations, I might be offered like the afternoon show or something. But that was the offer. And I was like, it was a point in my life where I described, I was a bit hapless in love, I was slightly Bridget Jones-esque. And actually what I needed was a regular income. And I was like, I'm being offered early breakfast again. 10 years has passed. But what had happened in those 10 years was I'd also gone off and set up Voiceover.
Yes.
I'd nearly stopped talking. And I'd set up Voiceover.
No need to apologise. I find it fascinating. And I'm sure everybody else does as well. You carry on.
Well, thank you. And I will circle back to this room in a minute, because there's relevance. So I, in one of the commercial radio stations that I'd worked at between Radio Bristol Stint 1 and Radio Bristol Stint 2, was a place called Media Broadcasting, which was live in-store radio for radio stations across the UK. So it was in the Because I'm Worth It days. It was pre-recession. And so we'd provide live in-store radio to the likes of Lloyd Swansea Live, to Dixon's, to Iceland, all these, and the idea was that you're providing messaging both to the customer who was in the store and also to the people who are working, to keep the camaraderie up. But what it did was it gave me an opportunity to also create a voiceover show reel, because it's very hard to create a voiceover show reel when you're in commercial radio, because you can't be a voiceover on the same station that you're presenting in. So, there can't be a presenter and then also have a voiceover that's got your voice in. Yeah. Because there were lots of different radio stations, I was able to provide voiceover for other radio stations and get that all-important thing called the show reel. And with that show reel, that allowed me to open up doors. And like I said, my parents didn't have much money, and I didn't have much money. In fact, I was in debt, and I'd been life had been very wonky. And I decided that I was going to take a punt. I was going to get a credit card. I was going to take out a loan of £3,000. And I was going to buy all the equipment I needed to set up in voiceover. And I was at the point of doing it, and my parents said, Faye, we believe in you and we are going to lend you the money. And it's a loan. You will have to pay it back, but only when you're ready. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I knew my parents didn't have much money. And I was so choked up that they should do it, that whenever I had a moment of, gosh, is this going to happen? I was like, no, it's going to happen. It is going to happen because my parents believe in me.
Yeah.
I had a tiny cupboard, literally a cupboard, that I could just about get a stool in and sit on the stool without my knees banging. I'd shut the door on the cupboard. I'd got duvets pinned all around it. I've got a microphone, and I could sit and record my voiceover. And that voiceover, that £3,000 paid for itself over and over and over again. And it was by doing that allowed me to pay off my debt, to get myself on a better footing. And it now is the thing that I do today. So despite the fact I returned then to Radio Bristol 10 years later, this time I had returned 10 years later, but I was also now established as a voiceover artist. So when I clocked off at 9-10 o'clock, I then would go back home. I would then do my voiceover work. So I was, that's how my life worked.
Love that.
Until about 10 years ago when I had my daughters. Yeah.
Wow.
Profile Me is a super shareable mobile application designed to help professionals grow their personal brand. Proudly paperless, this powerful tool packs the power of web, social media, and messaging into one beautifully designed interface that offers a unique and human-centric way to connect and build trust with clients. Easy to share on any platform and easy to save to any phone's home screen. With Profile Me, getting referred has never been easier.
And you mentioned kind of the foundations of Freelance Mum. What have traditionally been the challenges for networking for mums and parents generally? I think, and I guess very often they're very early starts, or there's a level of commitment. Or what challenges did you set out to address right from the start?
I suppose the first one is you can't bring your children. You can't turn up to a BNI meeting with your child. That's just not going to happen, or don't mind me, I'm just changing a nappy, or don't mind me, my toddler's just whatever. It's just not going to happen, and understandably
imagine the letter you get for that.
Exactly. I would be cross, and rightly so. There was the early starts, that just wasn't going to happen. There was a price barrier, they're quite expensive. That's fine, they've got their model, it's not a problem. But our income, I was self-employed. Let's not forget, when you're a self-employed mother, you get statutory maternity pay. It's very little, and you're surviving then on 1.5 incomes. So that's really challenging. You haven't got as much money as you used to have, and you've got a child in the mix. And also, I think the other big thing that happens, particularly as mothers, is you have a bit of a identity crisis, and actually your work is a big part of your identity. I think it is, particularly if you're self-employed and you're doing something you love. so it's quite important to keep it going. And it's not just about the money and the thing that you bring in, but actually that's part of you and your passion and your commitment and you know and your skills and your gifts, and you want to use them well. So actually, when you're time poor and cash poor, networking falls right off it's not even on the radar. It's nowhere to be seen. But actually, that's when you need it the most. And network in the truest sense, because as a mother and as someone who's self-employed, you have no sick pay, no holiday pay, no maternity pay, you know, and when the child is sick, you have to pick it all up. So you're like, well, how do I keep this show on the road?
Yeah.
There isn't a colleague to cover my back because I have to leave an hour early, because I am the colleague. I am HR. I am the HR department.
Yeah.
I am also the admin department and the accounts department and the person who's actually delivering the goods. I can't say my child's sick, would you mind covering? Because I am the one who's covering. And that's when I was like, actually, this is vital. How can we keep going unless we've got a network of support? And, you know, so that's why Freelance Mum was born.
Well done, you. And speaking as only a dad to a small Shih Tzu, enough, right? And so I can only imagine the other extra challenges of actually having real life humans, even ones that you compare your business length with.
Yeah, try doing that with a Shih Tzu. I'd like to see that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess I do want to talk about something else, but before I do forget, tell me about the room you're in.
Thank you. So when it came to us buying our home, we had a very loose agenda. We were like, well, we kind of want to be close to the city, but links to the country. Didn't really, and at the time Eddie works for Lloyd's, and it was important that he could cycle to work. So we were like fairly loose criteria, and this house came up. My husband said, it looks like a nice house. But look, it's also got a barn in the back garden. I was like, oh, that's cool, isn't it? A barn in the back garden. And it was in Whitchurch Village. And I thought, oh, I think I know that house. So we went and looked at this house, and as we walked in, I thought, oh gosh, yes, I really know this house. Not just a little bit, a lot bit. And when I was 6 and my sister was 4, my dad had a really big breakdown. And I just realised the second reference to a vicar now. And the curate spent the night with my dad, and me, my mum and my sister spent the night at the curate's house. So that my dad was manic, he thought he could heal people. So the curate stayed with my dad, and me and my mum and my sister, we spent the night in the curate's house. And we walked in to this house, and I was like, that's the house.
Wow.
That's the house. And the room that I'm in now, and I'm going to get quite emotional, is the room that I slept in as a child that night. And so this house used to be owned by the church. And the church, there were 2 parishes, and they decided to separate and become one parish, and it had been the curate's house. And when the parishes decided to separate and divide the assets, that's when this house came on the market. And so this house follows a very distinctive plan that all Church of England houses follow. You walk in through the front door, and you walk into the curate's office, this one. And then next to the office is a loo, and then between the office and the rest of the house is a dividing door. So that, in other words, the idea is that people would come and visit the curate, open the front door, welcome them in to the office, and they could also go to the loo without having to traipse through the family home and keep that part of the world separate. So, of course, I walked into this house. 1, I'm like, oh, God, I feel like a 6-year-old. And 2, this is the perfect working space. I no longer need to work in a cupboard with duvets pinned to the wall. This is and the estate agent's saying, well, of course, what you'd do is you'd knock through that door and that wall, and you'd make it a really big lounge. And I'm like, no, this is perfect. This is perfect. I now have the perfect setup, which actually allows me to work separate from the rest of the family. I have my working space, but that what goes on, there's a little dividing door, is the family home. So yeah, so it felt very much meant to be when I came back here.
Wow. This could be the longest episode ever, do you know? I could actually talk for a long time. I've really enjoyed this chat. Thank you. And thank you for sharing what you are as well. You mentioned, yeah, I'll have to let you decide whether the context of why you mentioned this you'll want to share or not. But you mentioned just before you came on that you enjoy swimming.
Oh,
Something
yes.
we have a shared passion of, goggles or goggleless, whichever you wish to prefer. But
Yes.
is that one of the things that kind of helps keep your energy up, keeps you in a good place, part of your kind of well-being regime? And what else do you do to kind of, because you're very busy professionally, you're visible, you're out there, you're doing stuff, but obviously there's a human that needs to recharge behind the scenes, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's almost the wrong word to say that swimming is very grounding, but it is incredibly grounding. I, in fact, joined the Lido in Bristol when I signed my second year of early breakfasts at the BBC, because I remember that I was thinking, this 4 o'clock alarm clock it was an amazing job, but it was quite grueling. And my friend said to me, what you need to do, Faye, is give yourself a treat. Why don't you become a member of the Lido? And that will allow you to, do your show, clock off and go to the Lido. So I was like, oh, yeah, great idea. And on the days where actually I didn't particularly want to swim, I could always cheat myself into it. I could say, oh, I'll go and sit in the steam room for a bit and I'll just look at the water. And of course, invariably you get really hot and you say, well, I'll just do 10 lengths. But you wouldn't do 10 lengths. You'd start with 10 and then you get to 20, and so on and so on. And I've always enjoyed it. Now, what happened was that, of course, during lockdown, everything shut, didn't it? And I'd always swum at the Lido, at least 2-3 times a week. That had been, and what I love about it, when I've got 2 types of swimming. I swim at the Lido and I do cold water swimming.
Oh, wow.
I always, yeah. So
Hardcore.
with the Lido, yeah. So when I swim at the Lido, I count from 42 backwards. That's a kilometre. So do the first 2, don't even think about it, just knock those off, and then I count backwards from 40, because counting backwards from 40 or whatever your number is far more psychologically rewarding than counting up. So I go in and I count
very
backwards
good.
from
Yeah,
40.
absolutely. Get that.
Yeah, this is good. And then of course during lockdown, everything's shut, and so I thought, well, I'm really, really missing swimming. If I'm going to do it, I'm just going to have to go and get into a river, aren't I? And it continued. And of course, we went into the winter lockdown and I thought, oh, blinking Nora. Oh, I didn't think I'd still be doing it now. And kept going. And of course, the swim times got shorter. So now I probably do a chilly swim once a week. And I do a Lido swim 2-3 times a week. And yeah, they're vital. I actually think it's really good that I have a hobby that I'm, no puns intended, fully immersed in, because it gives me that good. Did well then, didn't I? It gives me an opportunity to switch off, to put my brain in a different mode, just count, just do the numbers, just think about my stroke. Just, I can't have a phone with me. I can't check social media. I can't do any of those things. I'm not on. No one can get me, because I'm in the water, and it's great.
From a kind of a safety perspective, with my yellow hard hat on, what's the rules of engagement when it comes to cold water swimming? How long, especially in the winter, I guess? And as we record this today, I think it's meant to be the coldest day of the year so far. What are the kind of the rules of engagement with kind of cold water swimming? Is there a maximum amount of time you can stay in? What do you need to do beforehand or afterwards? That kind of stuff for people that are new to this.
So there's this is a really, really loose rule of thumb, okay, but I'm going to give it to you, and then it'll come with a massive caveat. So the one that you will hear the most is you can swim for 1 minute per centigrade. That's the water temperature. So if it's 5, I swam yesterday, it was 5, I did 5 minutes. But the massive caveat to that is it is not an exact science, and every body is different, and everybody is different every time. So you might have more natural neoprene, in which case you're going to be able to stay in the water for longer. Okay. You might be tired, in which case you're going to find it harder to stay in the water for longer. I have to tune into myself every time. I once did a gym workout and then I went for a swim, and it was the most painful swim ever because I'd really worked my muscles. I mean, that was a rookie mistake. I was like, oh, my body's so tense. This is so painful. And it's because I'd had a gym workout and my muscles were fatigued, So wow. That's what I like about it, that you can you've got to tune into yourself every time. There was a well-known program going back at least 10 years called I think it's the doctor who didn't take drugs. It was with Dr. Chris and Dr. Zant, Dr. Chris. And the thing that was prescribed as an antidote to depression was cold water swimming, but crucially with a friend. And it's to do with the electrodes and what happens to the brain when you're in the water, but also the fact that you are having a conversation with someone and you're sharing that experience. Now, I didn't enter cold water swimming in that same remit, but it is very, very well documented that actually cold water swimming, doing it with a friend, makes a huge difference. And it's so good for well-being, so good.
Amazing, love that. And you mentioned with Freelance Mum, excuse me, with Freelance Mum, the case of taking it from an idea that's in your head to then a real life thing, but then to a real life thing that other people are delivering around the country. That's an interesting one, actually, for me. I think when you have built a career as yourself, as your name, and I certainly find this as a challenge, that when you are the product in that sense, it's very difficult to build something which isn't you. I think for me personally, that fear of delegation comes into play, that I'm all for delegation, but also kind of trusting your brand in other places, with other people. That must have been a difficult kind of negotiation for you, or not?
It's an interesting one, Nick. And it's funny enough, I had the conversation this morning with someone when I was at the Lido, because someone said to me, I can't be Faye. It's like, no, you can't be Faye, because you are you. There can only be one Faye Dicker. There can only be one Nick Elston. That's just the way it is, isn't it? But and to a certain extent, I thought, oh, cripes, are they? There was a moment of thinking, can they do it? But it's like, actually, they'll do it in their own way, and that's the important thing. And actually, what happens at Freelance Mum is that we all then have this weekly online coffee morning every Wednesday, where we can all get together and we can all connect from all the hubs. So I might not have met some of the members in, say, Southampton in person, but I meet them every Wednesday when they come to the Freelance Mum online coffee morning. And actually, if I want this Freelance Mum brand to grow and to be a legacy and to support fellow mums in business, well, I can't be everywhere. I can't be in all places at all times. So you do then need your trusted team. You do need your ambassadors who are actually going to put their own signature on it. And they'll do little things in their own ways. And when I get their voice notes and see their photos about how it's gone, I am like a mother hen. I'm like, oh, I'm bursting with pride, because I can hear their pride in their voice doing their net walks. And I'm like, oh, this is so lush. It's all working so well. So yeah, there will only be one Faye Dicker, but they will do it in their own way.
Sounds like a football chant. There's only one Faye Dicker. Anyway, I think that's the way my brain works. So sorry about it. So, okay. The question I like to ask everybody that comes on the show, and it forms part of a playlist that's available at the end of the season, is this. I am now the MC of the O2 Arena in London. 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing, whatever thing you are doing on the day is. You hear me call your name, you're sat back in the green room, and your walk-on music kicks in, that song that motivates you, that lifts you, and gets you at peak state. Faye Dicker, what would your walk-on music be and why?
Oh, damn it, I don't know. I really don't know. Oh, that's a really rubbish answer. I mean, I was only listening the other day, and this wouldn't be the walk-on one, but I really do love, I Did It My Way, Frank Sinatra. It's so moving. I mean, that wouldn't be the one you could walk on to. Yeah. But it is.
We could kind of saunter on. I quite like a big amount of confident kind of saunter onto that, yeah.
It's a swagger, isn't it? It's so emotive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite cheesy, but I played it as my last song at Radio Bristol the first time.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like, yeah, I did it. I was like,
it's got to be that.
Yeah, I did it.
I'd want that on the playlist.
It's got, yeah, I just felt like I did it my way. That first time around at Radio Bristol, I had loved it, but actually it was made very, very obvious that there wasn't a particularly nice manager there. And she made it very obvious that if I wanted promotion, if I wanted to go somewhere, that actually it was dead man's shoes. She pretty much said that to me, and if you want to go on elsewhere, then you need to go elsewhere. If you want promotion, go somewhere else. And so when I left, actually, I was really upset. But I thought, if I want to make it, I'm going to have to do it my way then.
Yeah.
Because you're making it impossible for me, and I can't keep doing earlies forever. So I'm going to have to go and do it my way. And so And so I played that as a kind of a, you know, and I put, yeah, you know, and so
Genuinely,
I heard
he's in the pod here. I was just about to
Yes.
say to you, there's this exercise I do at Find Your Voice Live, and I get people to talk about their comeback story, and I call it your biggest two-finger moments. Actually turn around and say, look, I did it. That thing you said I couldn't do, I did it.
It was exactly that. And, you know, and it really was my two-finger moment. I was like, I'll do it my way. Fine. If you're not going to promote me, if you don't want me on the airwaves, that's fine. I'll do it my way. And that's why it was quite galling, you know, to then come back 10 years later and be offered the same job, this time under a different manager. But I was like, I'll take it. It's a really good opportunity. I'll take it. But and I only put it on again. I don't know why I put it on again, but I did. And it gets you, doesn't it? You know, and you think, yeah, I did it my way. There wasn't a set path. There wasn't a do this, do that, do this. I did make it up as I went along. I had to make it up as I went along. There was no other way to do it. I did it my way. So, yeah.
We all are. I think that's the thing. No one's got life nailed, even if they tell you they have. No one's got life nailed. Everyone's winging it. I love that. I love that honesty as well. I guess that the final question before I release you back into the wilds of Whitchurch Village is, what's next for Faye Dicker? Are there any kind of big, outrageous goals you have left to achieve or to aim for, or maybe a small thing that you want to achieve? What's next for you?
Oh, I'm going to give you 3. Okay, and they're slightly different. So one is I would like to do more speaking slots. Brilliant. So as you know, absolutely, my background. Thank you, Nick. And that's how we first connected. I was like, I want to do more talking, actually. Anyone want to listen to me? You know, that's what I actually do. And I've dedicated my life in the last 10 years to Freelance Mum, and I will continue to. But actually, my background, all my training from a young age is in presenting and performing. And so I think I need to be putting myself out there as a speaker. I'd like to get on the speaker circuit and to do that. So that's 1. 2, you're going to like the 3rd one. 2, I don't like more hubs. I want a hub wherever it is needed. I said that to someone once. I said, you need to be more specific. Wherever it's needed isn't good enough. Can you be? And no, that is it. I'm not going to deliberately launch in Birmingham if Birmingham doesn't need me. So wherever a hub is needed, I would like to launch a hub. And I want it to be, you know, and I'd like it to pay me actually as well. I'd like Freelance Mum to pay me. I've done a lot of this and it's wiped its face, but I'd like it to actually draw a wage. That's a nice thing, isn't it? And thirdly,
dreams and missions don't pay the mortgage, do they? And I think that the thing is the problem with passion work, as it absolutely is that when there's this crossover with payment as well, and kind of, but the more that you get reimbursed and paid to do this stuff, the bigger an audience you can reach, and that's the kind of the justification, because very often you become the wounded healer, right? You just give until you drop. The third thing is,
I want to learn front crawl. So I'm very good at breaststroke, but I cannot do front crawl, and I've had lots of different lessons for front crawl, and I have confused my own head. I've had gym workouts designed to help me do front crawl, and I've had to say, Faye, just get in the water, just go up and down with your float and practice your legs. So I would like to learn front crawl, and I'd like to do that this year. So those are the 3 things.
You're right. I love all of those things. So I guess I'm fortunate. I won't use the word lucky.
I'll get my husband onto you. Yeah,
exactly. I've worked hard at building up a big network. So to my network who are tuning into this, if you need a hub in your area, you know where to go. Anybody else who wants to connect with Faye, reach out, connect, and do all the things we should be doing, please do. I know Faye will be really pleased to hear from you. But from me to you, Faye, first of all, big hug and a big round of applause for Faye Dicker, an amazing guest. Thank you for sharing what you have with us. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
My pleasure. I bloody loved it, Nick. I'm so pleased we've connected. We need to go swimming. That's what we need to do.
Absolutely. We absolutely do need to do that. Maybe we'll start with coffee first, because body stuff, but that's a whole different conversation. But there we go. But to everybody else, I hope you've enjoyed today's show as much as I have. I'm sure you have. Please stay tuned for next week's episode. Hit like, subscribe, whatever it takes to get you back. We have the amazing Dave Harris, again, along the communication kind of line of things. Amazing guy from the world of producing and lots of different things. So, stay tuned for that one. And in the meantime, happy Mondays. Have a great week ahead, and I will see you soon. Take care, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.